Okay, good morning from Los Angeles. I am so excited to have a conversation with sweet Julie G. And everyone who has met her knows that she's a remarkable woman. And those of you who haven't, you have a wonderful, unique opportunity. We're going to stream this on Facebook so more people can watch a little bit later on. So if you give me 1 second, we'll go there. And we are just delighted to move this forward, Julie. Give me one
Thank you.
second. Yeah, that'd be great. And then we can clean up this in a bit. Preparing to live stream. Once upon a time, we didn't have all this technology, as everybody knows.
A
Okay.
blessing and a curse.
Yeah, I find that to be very true. So let's see if it's working. Preparing to live stream. Once upon a time, we didn't have all this technology, as everybody. Oh, okay. So that should be streaming, Julie. So let's go back to Zoom and attendees. I'm hoping that everybody is in that needs to be in. Oh, Susan, Peg, Kyla, Ellen, Jerry, a couple others. You're going to have a really nice circle of new friends and old friends and all that kind of stuff. So, Jerry, if there's any problems, so please do message me. So, good morning once again. We have Julie G here, and we're going to have a great conversation. Julie is one of the most remarkable mesothelioma warriors, but also just a woman. Mesothelioma does not define who Julie is, but it has shaped her life. So, fair, Julie?
It has absolutely shaped my life in ways that I did not anticipate or expect, as most illnesses do.
So let's get started. I'd like you to introduce yourself so people hear from you before I start with some questions that I wrote just to balance the conversation. So, Julie, who are you?
I am Julie Gunlock. I am a wife and a mother and a mesothelioma survivor of almost 20 years. I will have the 20th anniversary of my diagnosis this weekend. 20 years of the anniversary of when they told me I had 6 to 12 months to live.
Yeah, it's pretty staggering. So this is a remarkable weekend, and I'm excited that we get to do this conversation with you before you have your formal celebration. Okay, so let's think about this. Julie, take us back to August 26th. What was happening in your life when you realized something was wrong? Because that's a common thing where small symptoms obviously add up to oftentimes a mesothelioma diagnosis. Take us back to 2006.
So in 2006, I'm 35 years old. I've got a daughter who's just turned 3, a barely 3-year old. I'm working full time. My husband's working full time. We're busy. We're busy people with a little kid in the house and pets and and we were in our prime. Like we were having a good time. We were busy. It was fun. And after I had had my daughter, like things were never the same. But I think most women will tell you, like, you don't expect it the same. Like things are different with your body. And so I think in hindsight, there were a lot of symptoms I may have written off. But in early August of '06, I was getting ready to go to an event, to a wedding with my husband, and was excited. It was a good friend of ours getting married. So I was ready to look really cute. And I kept putting on all these dresses and thinking, God, that looks terrible. And that looks terrible. And why am I so bloated? And it made me actually stop and think about my digestion, which I don't think I had ever done in my life before. And I was like, wow, like I haven't gone to the bathroom like in a while. And, in a while, I've been at least several days. And so, I just did what people do. Like I drank some senna tea and I ate some prunes. And I finally called my doctor at the end of the week and was like, I think there's something going on. And I went to my doctor and I went from, on a Saturday being totally fine and a little bit constipated to by the following Saturday being mentally prepared for surgery because they think I have cancer. Like in less than a week, in the span of a week, I went from fine to so not fine you can't even imagine. And they had prepared me. The first time I went to the doctor, he sent me immediately for CT scans. CT scans found a mass in my pelvis and fluid in my lungs. And I think just because of my age and the presentation at the time, they assumed that I had ovarian cancer. And so we proceeded as if that were the case. And, within, a week, 10 days after that, I was on an operating table having a radical hysterectomy where they discovered that it was not, in fact, the silent killer. It was worse than the silent killer, uh, which, like, I couldn't even wrap my brain around it. And that surgery was on August 23rd of 2006, which is what I consider my anniversary date because that is the first day that anybody said the word mesothelioma to me.
So you are very unique, Julie, in many ways, but let's talk about your early presentation of symptoms. It is unusual from my personal experience with Alan, but also what I know from the 20 plus years of my work. Most people, to find an accurate diagnosis, it can take years. You actually
Absolutely.
had a diagnosis for peritoneal mesothelioma and you were having surgery within 2 weeks, which is a rapid fire. So, how did you find and build your medical team? What did that look like for you?
Um, some of it was hard work and some of it was dumb luck, frankly. My internist, my general practitioner that I went and saw the first time, Um, I had seen him for years since before I had ever gotten pregnant. He was the greatest guy, great doctor. And I consider that the first miracle of my story. And there are many along the roads. But when I went to my doctor and I said, these are my symptoms, and I really think something's wrong, he did not dismiss me. He did not minimize what was going on. He said, you never come to see me. And if you say something's wrong, I believe you and you need a scan. And that in and of itself is really kind of unheard of. And I think more unheard of all the time. And once there was a scan, I had such a mass in my pelvis that couldn't have been dismissed as anything else. And the truth is, I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. And there are some hospitals here that if you have breast cancer, there are some great cancer hospitals here. If you have common cancers, there are hospitals here that can give you great treatment. I did not have a common cancer. So the news I got from my initial medical team here in St. Louis was incredibly discouraging. They didn't really offer hope at all. And had I stayed in St. Louis, I wouldn't be here today. I could say that 100%. So while there was a lot of luck involved in my initial diagnosis, finding a true care team for mesothelioma was a little bit of a journey.
And when I talk to other patients and families, I feel honestly like mesothelioma doesn't just impact the patient, it impacts your entire family and your circle of friends. And I see Dan has joined. So when you and Dan were traveling around to New York and other centers of excellence, you had surgeries, chemotherapy, infusions, all kinds of different treatments. And this is 20 plus years. So when you look back at the treatment journey for yourself and what you learned with Dan, What do you think the most difficult medical decisions were, and how did you navigate them? Because I think when patients come to a mesothelioma diagnosis and they hear it for the first time, like when Alan and I heard it, we thought asbestos has been banned. We were like just fat, dumb, and happy, thinking, how can this happen to us? We always thought our air, water, and free were contaminants. So, like you, how did you approach the difficult medical decisions that both you and Dan had to make? And you had a 3-year-old baby at home. Tell us about that.
Well, I went to a mesothelioma medical conference shortly after I was diagnosed in 2006. It was early October, so I was maybe 6 weeks out from diagnosis, which is where we met, Linda. When I was about 6 weeks out, that was the first time, and you were one of the very first people I met, even there. And that is where I, met some doctors around the country. Most mesothelioma is in the lungs. Mine was not in the lungs. Mine was in my abdomen, which made me a rare case of a rare cancer. So I didn't just have to find a mesothelioma specialist. I had to find an abdominal mesothelioma specialist, and they were very few and far between. I think the people doing aggressive treatments, which is what I knew I required at that point in time. There were three in the nation. I could have gone to Washington, D.C., or Nebraska, or Manhattan. And I weighed my options for a variety of reasons and decided that New York was probably the best fit for me. And so I knew, leaving that conference, that I wanted to go to New York, that if I felt like if I stood any chance at all of survival, I had to go to New York. And it was a hard decision. Like, we're blue collar people. Like, I mean, I went home and I'm like, my baby is 3 and I'm going to lose my house. And it all boiled down to, none of it matters if I'm dead. None of it matters if I'm dead. And the I I moved out of my parents' house when I was young, and I was self-supporting at a really young age. And my husband and I decided, you know what? We've been broke. We know how to be broke. And if we're broke, we're broke. And it took a real leap of faith. I am not a very religious person, but I tried to be a somewhat faithful person, and someone dear to me. When I said I think I need to go to New York, she asked me, well, how are you going to do that? And I said, I don't know, but I feel like if I do the footwork, God's going to take care of the rest somehow. And so I just made a decision, and I just started doing the next thing in front of me to get to that goal.
So, with a small 3-year-old child, you and Dan embarked on a journey to the East Coast, not exactly always the easiest city to navigate, but you went knowing that that was your best chance of survivorship and also thrivership. I think those both go together, or you can interchange them. So, knowing what you did, you had to fast build a circle of support. So, for new patients looking at what you did, your life lessons, how would you describe or best translate your circle of support when you were leaving for New York? Where did you get the information? How did you build your expert team? What did that look like to you?
Well, I found the team at that medical conference and became really entrenched with other patients that were being treated by that team in New York. And those people were a great deal of my life raft. Like, there are not a lot of people in the world that can comprehend the level of treatment I was going through, the desperation of having to travel for treatment, which is brutal. Um, and I luckily, in my life, in my normal life, I have a strong support system. I have got an amazing husband, and the women in my life cannot be rivaled. And all of those people just did whatever they could to make it happen. My mother came and stayed with Madeline a lot when Dan had to come up to New York. She would come and stay with our daughter. When I came up for shorter trips for chemotherapy, he would stay home with our daughter, and my girlfriends were on this rotating track of who was going to New York with me. And at, at some points I felt like, you guys have to fight it out amongst yourselves. Like, I'm not picking, because people wanted to support me. And I am so lucky in that. Like, I know a lot of people don't have that, but I also know that, we live in the society that shoves self-reliance down our throats. And it is a situation that requires reliance upon others and trust upon others, and being accepting of that help in whatever form it looks like.
So you were good about accepting help from others, which is sometimes not easy for type A women like yourself and myself to do. So it sounds like you were able to show up to that scene and accept the balance of help and love. As you were enduring your new treatment, understanding what your diagnosis was, how were you exposed, what the treatment looked like, and of course the prognosis, which was so dim and dark when Alan was diagnosed in 2002. Tell me about what you learned as you were seeking care, which is your top priority. You must have been uncovering some dark secrets about your exposure history. Can you share a little bit about your dad and what you learned about asbestos the hard way?
I learned so much about asbestos, about mesothelioma. I felt like someone had dropped me into grad school out of eighth grade. Like, I was hearing so many words I didn't understand. Like, I mean, there were concepts. Um, it was just such a crash course in everything. What I learned about, I would say, more asbestos than my history is is that there's no safe level of exposure of asbestos. I think that's an illusion that all sorts of people believe, that you have to be around it all the time to become sick from it, and that is not the case, as you well know, and as most of the people in my life know at this point, because I talk about asbestos a lot. That there is no safe exposure. One exposure can cause cancer, and and everywhere it is. I think I had no idea. I think most people had no idea about how prevalent it was used, especially in the 50s and 60s. And certainly before then and after them, but I think that was kind of the golden age, which means, not only is it being used in the asbestos tiles in your basement, but probably also in the mastic that stuck it there, and perhaps in the drywall compound in your walls, and perhaps even mixed into the paint, and also in your insulation, and maybe in your oven gloves, and maybe and maybe and maybe and maybe. It was just everywhere. And I know, there are people who become ill, and because there is no traceable connection, obviously, to asbestos, they think, well, maybe it's not asbestos. And I just don't even believe that, because I believe it was in so many places that no one knows, everywhere they could have possibly been exposed, especially with its prevalence in automobile brakes. I mean, brake dust is everywhere, and it doesn't need to be your brakes. It can be somebody else's brakes. That brake dust is just in the ether of our environment now. And so learning all of that was overwhelming and scary and infuriating.
And your father's exposure, can you, I don't want to violate any
Uh,
legal
my
privacy.
father was a commercial electrician, so he worked around asbestos all the time. I think it would have been considered at the time low levels of exposure. I mean, he wasn't blowing in insulation like some people were, but I mean, it was used in wiring insulation, and he was always, climbing around in the rafters of commercial buildings, like laying electrical lines. And it was just in the construction environment so much that he was around it all the time.
Yeah, and as a young girl, you would have hugged him and not even known anything on his clothing could have obviously been contaminated by asbestos. When you were first,
Also, also, my parents built the house I grew up in themselves from the ground up in the 60s. So, I mean, it was in all of those, construction materials. And the laundry room where his dirty clothes went was connected to the playroom. It was one room in the basement. The playroom and the laundry room was one room.
when you were diagnosed 20 plus years ago, the level of imports of raw asbestos coming to the United States would have been thousands and thousands of tons every year. Every year. So when you look back on your father's exposure, what that meant to you as a mom, as a woman, as a wife, when you look at that, what feelings rage through your body? I guess rage is kind of a tipping word, but how did you feel when you connected asbestos to your disease?
I, I think rage is the perfect word. I was infuriated at the injustice, at the continuing tipping of the scales towards corporations, away from people, towards profits over persons. I was just overwhelmed with the unfairness, I think, of it all. And I think people who have workplace illnesses, and there have always been workplace illnesses. I mean, men who worked in mines got black lung and silicosis. We know this, and it's horrible. Uh, but I think people understand risks sometimes when they're doing it themselves. I think those people don't understand that they take that risk home with them to their families. I think, what people think is, an acceptable risk I would take for myself, I would never put on my child. And we put it on children every day.
Yeah, and we still, without a full comprehensive ban, we wrote a letter. I wrote a letter April 1st of this year to FDA and CPSC to ask them to please research the kid squishy toy. And ultimately took 2 months later, they did a recall, and there were 120,000 kids' toys that had tremolite asbestos in it. So your story, although is horrific and beyond debilitating to you and your family, you think about this is still going on. You built a medical team of experts, but let's face it, you and I learned about asbestos the hard way. I think many times when I'm talking to people, when we talk about building your legal team, because that's really important, you can't be a forensic expert for your father. And sometimes, at least for Alan and I, maybe it was different for you and Ann, Dan, we never sued anybody. That's just like not what the Reinsteins would have done. And I have gone back in my life and realized the legal elements and opportunities to hold companies accountable is one of the strongest tools that an asbestos victim or warrior has in their tool chest, because if you don't hold these companies accountable, they don't stop using asbestos. And we also learn along the way about discovery. So think for a second about building your medical team, your family support team. Then you had to build legal. And then I want you to be thinking, you took your story to Washington, D.C. You presented at numerous staff briefings that I've done on the Hill about your story. So think about how you built your team, What are the lessons learned? And then let's think about sharing your story, like whether it's through ADAO storytelling or going to Washington with ADAO or coming to our conference or Miles for Meso. Let's talk about first your legal team.
Well, I met my legal team at a mesothelioma conference, which showed me, first of all, that they were investing back into the community. Um, every attorney that is working in asbestos litigation is making a lot of money. We're not going to kid anybody that they're not. But the fact that my team was giving money back as well was very important to me. Uh, I used a law firm that's kind of local here in our area called Simmons Hanley Conroy. It was just Simmons back then, but they've branched out. Uh, and they were invested and they specialized in this. I didn't realize that most of those TV commercials you see saying, call us, aren't even actual asbestos lawyers most of the time. They are farming to larger firms who actually do asbestos litigation, and they're just kind of skimming off the top, which is weird. Uh, but it is something, like you said, these people need to be held to account, and there needs to be penalties for the egregious behavior, this egregious corporate behavior that kills people. And without that, I would have never been able to seek out the level of medical care I required. Even if I had, you know, been able to have every actual medical expense covered by my insurance, which, insurance doesn't want to pay for lots of things these days. But like, I was coming from St. Louis to Manhattan. I'd never even been to New York before at that point in my life. And instead, I'm going and I need lodging for months at a time. I need flights. I need transportation. I need car transportation. I need food. It it was astronomical. And without litigation, we would not have been able to do that. It would have limited me in the medical care that I was able to get. So it's important on so many levels. And the problem's not going to go away. I mean, the problem's not going to go away for decades. There is still so much asbestos out there in the world, in our nation. Um, that to think that because of any kind of pseudo ban on asbestos products, that the issue is going to go away when you're looking at a latency period of, 20 to 50 years sometimes.
Yeah, true that. But the first step we have to do is mitigate the risk with prevention, right? Prevention, elimination.
Absolutely.
Other and I think when we started ADAO, I remember taking a really big hit because we were the first prevention organization, and some people who did only research for a cure were like agitated, like we should be focusing only on research. And of course, Alan was alive then. I said, we want research and a cure too, but we know the first step to a cure is prevention. So we walked on some rocky roads, and you were always there, Julie, believing in prevention as part of the cure. So I thank you for that. All right, let's think a little bit. When you first get diagnosed with any disease, especially mesothelioma, you're thinking first triage is survivorship. But you, after these years, the life you've built with Dan and your daughter and the community that we all love, you have been really in thrivership. So think about from the first time you were diagnosed, looking back these decades, thrivership, what does that mean to you? And with the upcoming milestone, I'm sure it is emotional because in the very beginning, you didn't know you were even going to have the first 12 months with Madeline. And now you have this amazing life and circle and husband and family and others that adore you. Think about going from survivorship to thrivership and where you are now. Tell me.
Well, it's not certainly not flipping a switch from one to the other, because that they coexist. Certainly, it's one and the same. And I don't know. I believe on some level that we have to take whatever we're giving in life and not just navigate it, but see how it can become a tool, um, and take our darkest moments and use them to help other people navigate dark moments. There's an old saying about the same boiling water turns an egg hard and a potato soft. And you get to decide. And trauma in life can make you bitter, or it can make you better. And and I believe it's a choice, and it's a hard choice, and it is a daily choice to not kind of slip into darkness with it because it's easy. And I do this work that I do with you in advocating about mesothelioma. So, like I said, I'm not a religious person, but any kind of major crisis, I think everybody like turns to whatever faith they have. And I made a deal with God, whatever you want to call God. But I had a conversation one time, and I am comfortable public speaking. I used to be a bartender. I could handle a room. Uh, and people seem to be asking me to speak. And I told whatever's out there, I said, okay, as long as you keep me alive, I'll keep doing this if they keep asking. And so I guess people keep asking, so I keep doing it. And I have learned a little bit about most things aren't big deals. There are big deals in life. Most things aren't them. And how important it is to just say yes, to just say yes. And I think that's not just yes to doing this, it's yes to new things in life and scary things in life. And I think that's what helps me thrive. I joke that I try to learn something new every year. And every year it's something weird. Last year I took guitar lessons. Uh, I learned how to do pottery. I've learned to needlepoint. This year I started beekeeping. Uh, and it's about just kind of embracing life and understanding like how precious it is and how tenuous it is and how close I was to it just being gone, that that I have to say yes. And horrible things create good things. Pressure creates diamonds, right? And my husband and I and our daughter like have such a tight family bond that I don't think we would have had otherwise. We went through this period where we had to like really just close ranks, and it sucked, but there was value on the other side. And there's still value on the other side. I don't know who I would be without the last 20 years. I don't know. Um, but I know that it would not be this because it has changed every aspect of who I am.
But you have made it for the better, Julie, and you continue to help other people. And I think finding your voice and using your voice is something you've demonstrated so beautifully, whether it's showing up at the Miles for Meso run, coming to our conference, going to Capitol Hill, writing, whatever it looks like. I remember the early days, your birthday is on Earth Day or near Earth Day. And you
Your
used
Earth
to,
Day.
yeah, and you used to say, "Hey, can I get some brochures from you?" And I'm like, "Okay, I'm not really sure what we're going to do. That's a new ask." But we did. We printed it, and there you'd be in your tent passing out brochures on Earth Day, alerting people to asbestos. What is it? Where is it? What do you do? And that it could be in your home schools buildings or on consumer shelves. And you did a really amazing job in your early Earth Day, advocacy. So you went solo, then you went group, and then you're very reachable to patients and families. Hearing your story and with great sensitivity, you're an outlier. Not everybody gets to have 20 years. Alan had three, and they weren't easy years. And he did his best to survive, but thriving was a difficult challenge. So you have a really unique perspective to talk to other people in a very positive way. Tell me your top two things that you think patients and their families, because mesothelioma didn't just impacted you, it impacted Dan and your parents and your daughter. What are two messages you think most patients and families could learn from you?
My first advice to patients always, and is to find a specialist. And don't think, oh, well, the cancer center in my town is fine. Um, Only if they specialize in mesothelioma. And the biggest question to ask a physician is, how many cases of mesothelioma have you treated? And most oncologists will say none
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
have no experience. And it is of the utmost importance to a patient to see someone who specializes in the specific cancer that they have. Research centers are the best. So, and to caregivers and patients, I would say as much as you can, continue to live your life while you're doing this. It's incredibly difficult, but you've got to try to find small snippets of joy where you can. I used to I used to fly to New York on a Wednesday during the day to get chemo on Thursday and come home Thursday night. I would go straight from a chemotherapy appointment to LaGuardia. Like literally, I would go to chemo with my suitcase. And but I always tried on a Wednesday night when I flew into New York to like, can I find a show? Can I find a nice restaurant? Can I do something? Can I do something good to offset the crappiness of tomorrow? and and I think it was helpful. And like you said, I know I'm an outlier. The people, the patients that were my support when I came in, they're all gone, all of them. Um, which I think makes my survivorship more important and my voice more important because I speak for them too. And they were some of the most loving, supportive, joyful people I've known in my life. And in their journey made them bitter or made them better, not bitter.
I remember meeting you in 2007, and Alan had passed away in 2006. And the memory of his treatment and enduring and slowly watching the health impact that Emily and I endured watching Alan pass through. I looked at you in 2007 and prayed that you would not have to endure Alan. So you speaking for the hundreds of thousands of Allens and others is so important. And you show up. You show up at Miles for Meso. You are radiant. And you have this Julie sparkle like a diamond. I'm sure Dan's smiling now because you do. You're radiant. And not every patient has those skills. And I love when you and Dan are together because the bond and the love you share is really infectious. I can see it, it's palpable. Thinking about courage, hope, and healing. those aren't just goofy three words like in a Scrabble board. They're words that we have to, I feel, we words that Alan and I had to learn what was the meaning of truly of courage, hope, and healing as Alan underwent his treatment. What do those three words mean to you and your family? Let's think about you first. Courage, hope, and healing.
Courage is saying yes. Hope is faith in the outcome. And healing's just walking the path.
That's beautiful. Say it one more time.
I, I don't remember even what I said, Linda.
Then I'll pull it off the transcript because it's a beautiful way that you've wrapped
Okay.
meaning around those. You don't have to go back because that's a tricky thing. Okay, so now I'm going to light a fire. Uh, what do you want to tell your two Missouri senators, your House members, Congress? You have to be slight diplomat. The
I
President
know.
of the United
And,
States.
and you know that's difficult for me. Um, you know that's
I
difficult for me.
do, but we have to keep it PG-13 and a little bit diplomatic. So, what's your message generally to Congress? What's that Julie G message?
My Julie G message to all our politicians is to remember that you are here to serve your constituents and not the corporations that are perhaps making the larger donations. I think that we are in a crisis period in our society when it comes to, the battle between healthcare and corporate profits and holding people accountable. And I want to see a shift. I want to see a shift in the focus of who gets the benefits from our government. And I don't mean like, a social security benefit or a food stamp benefit. I mean the benefits of governmental investment. I want to see them invest in the health and well-being of their constituents.
Well, you've definitely been making the world a better place. And it's not just in the US, it's a global problem. 40,000 Americans die every year, and I'm sorry to even use those statistics in front of you, Julie, but 40,000 Americans do die every year of a preventable asbestos-caused disease. And it's not just mesothelioma.
I know.
ADAO is very dedicated to eliminating all asbestos-caused diseases, and we look at lung cancer as claiming the lives of about 34,000 Americans. And then obviously the balance is mesothelioma and other diseases. So there's a couple things, and if it's okay with you, I see Dan there. I'm going to bring him on in a second because I bet he's got a message for you. This is not choreographed. I didn't ask for permission, but I love Dan, and he'll go with it. This anniversary is big, but I want people to know where they can find you and hear you. So let's talk a little bit about ADO's 21st conference in Washington, D.C. You are going to be the host. We sometimes take the gender off. We can say hostess, but let's go with host. That's how Jordan Zevon wrote it. You are in the new flyer for the Friday event, which is an evening under the stars with music, love, and that's how ADO builds art, advocacy, and action. You're hosting that first ever three-person band musical extravaganza. What are you thinking?
I think it's going to be fun. And I know that what we do is serious work. And I know that, there is often a lot of pain and sadness involved in the work we do. But going back, like I said, you have to find the spark of joy. You have to find the hope in the spark of joy. And I think it's going to be a great event. I think it's going to be a fantastic event. I'm working on a fabulous jacket that I'm making. It's going to be over the top and wonderful. And people, it's been said for years, laughter is the best medicine. So is music. Anything that can make your heart soar a little bit makes life worthwhile. And I think it's going to be a fantastic event, and we're going to be able to reach a lot of people and inform a lot of people of a lot of things and, help everybody find their own way into advocacy that they can do.
And your law firm is a generous platinum sponsor, just so you know. I know you do know that. Simmons Hanley Conroy, I believe Perry is on this call now. They have supported and allowed ADO to thrive without borders, boundaries, discrimination, telling us what to do, because that wouldn't work very well for me anyway. But ADO has been able to be a leading independent organization of prevention and elimination for 20 plus years, and I'm grateful to all, including your personal family donations. Okay, so that's Friday night, and then let's flip to Saturday, which happens to be National Mesothelioma Awareness Day, and you, for the awards and candlelighting, are going to give our keynote speech. So to me, it's even more important that our annual conference happens to fall on September 26th, and I know you know these dates well. This September 11th is the 25th anniversary of 9/11. And it's tearful for me because my friend was the captain on Flight 11 that went into the first World Trade Center on American Airlines. And we're seeing the suffering and disease and deaths just be horrific. So our conference will spotlight the 25th anniversary, but we're going to bring in that joy from Julie G throughout the entire weekend. But your keynote is really important. All right, I didn't ask Dan for permission, but he's going to say yes. Dan, get ready. I'm going to say, hey, Dan, can you come on? You have to turn your camera on too. Maybe he doesn't have a camera that goes on after he does. Dan, are you there?
I am here.
I don't see you yet.
Well, where is my camera? I
I
don't
don't
even
know.
know where my camera is.
That's what my 94-year mother says. Linda Marie, I don't see where the camera is. Sometimes that's a blessing.
Yeah, sometimes I think that might be the case this time too.
If you find it,
I did not know.
don't worry.
Usually,
Let's
usually I can find it on a Zoom, but for some reason I can't. So
let's there's a little camera icon down the bottom left, second from the far left. Just whack that button. If not, we'll go with voice.
it
So,
is not there by the
okay.
mute chat
Okay.
Q&A.
We
So
won't worry.
sorry.
We won't worry about that. So, Dan, as I remarked earlier, you are such an amazing husband, partner, friend, supporter of Julie. And all of this journey you have walked side by side and allowed Julie to choose her moments of leading, but you've never wavered. What do you want to tell Julie after she shared this story this morning? What makes Julie Julie, and what do you want other caregivers and partners to learn from you? Those are two important messages, Dan.
Well, for one thing, I never let her do anything. She pretty much does what she's going to do. Um, which has been a hallmark of our relationship since day one. We're our own people, you know. I'm incredibly proud of her. I'm in awe of what she's gone through. Um, and I just got out of the way to try and support it, you know, in whatever I can do or could do. Um, and I want to say that the way that one of the things that informed how we went through the entire thing was just having a 3-year old and then a 4 and then 5 and 6, having a child at home. We tried to keep things as normal as we could in the most abnormal situation you can think of, and operated with a level of honesty and transparency that while age appropriate included our daughter, you know. And Julie is fond of saying it takes a village. You know, it takes a village to raise a kid. It takes a village to live a good life, and especially in that circumstance. So the acceptance of help from other people was paramount to our success. And it really still is, the fact that we can give some of that back, that we can extend help or support or an ear or yes, I hesitate to say an example, but we just did the next right thing. We just did what was right in front of us and didn't worry too much about the bigger picture because who has control of that? You know, not not us, not at all. So proud of us. I love our life. Julie G is good people. So are you, Linda.
Oh, you're
Such
sweet.
good people, and we're grateful for the support for the ADAO. We're grateful for for the way that we've been able to play the cards we were dealt, I guess.
So there's going to be a happy anniversary message this week. It's going to be bittersweet. I know it will be, you will make it sweet, but looking back, it wasn't always an even road. What's your happy anniversary message, Dan, to Julie this morning?
Oh my God. Uh, thanks for allowing me to be part of the ride. It has really profoundly changed us uh, in ways that we couldn't foresee in any way. Some good, some bad, but again, I love our life. Love you, Julie G, and looking forward to the next 20.
I'll say cheers to that. So, to Dan and Julie G and those who listened, thank you for joining us. There's more of Julie G and Dan on the horizon. We'll update your blog for this event and play this video back. But to anybody who's newly diagnosed, look at Dan and Julie G and recognize you can find the sweetness in every day. Sometimes you have to work a little harder and look a little deeper, but it's always there. And if there is a dark area and you can't find your way out, seek professional help. Contact ADO, but if you really need mental help, see a professional because this is a really can be a very tough journey and none of us do it alone. Julie, what's your closing message?
Linda,
Yeah.
as you were talking about darkness right now, I read once that if things are hard and you're in the dark and you can't see the light, perhaps you are the light. And I'll say that to anyone, you know, maybe you can't see the light because you are the light. And, you know, I have a friend who just got diagnosed with cancer, and I told her what someone told me, and it's how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time. And when we see things hard, we deal with them one piece at a time, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time, until we can get through. And we only get through together.
That's true.
And I want to send love to my ride or die there, Dan. So that's
And
it. Thank you, Linda, for always giving me the opportunity.
you are remarkable. So for anybody listening, listen to Julie. Build your expert medical team. Don't be afraid to say yes to help. You can seek legal counsel too. That is not a bad thing. That is what people do to help pay for treatment and other things and hold companies accountable. And you can also use your voice and give back. And Dan and Julie are amazingly generous with both the opportunity of using their voice and also giving back. So in my town, this is called a wrap. So Julie and Dan, happy anniversary. I'm so happy to see you.
Thank you,
I'll
Linda.
see you soon.
Deal. Happy. Kiss her twice for me, Dan, this weekend.
You know I will. Love you.
I do. Love you too. Thanks, gang.
Bye.
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 Thanks.